you ready for a deep dive into one of the most intense animated series out there? Welcome to Radioactive Ramblings, where we are currently breaking down the world of Invincible. Each week, we're going to unpack the jaw-dropping twists, the unforgettable characters, and that trademark brutal action. From Mark Grayson's journey to the darker side of heroism, to our continued love of Debbie, we've got every moment covered.
Mark, I don't want to hurt you.
I'm not the one who's gonna get hurt.
You said you don't do threats.
Yeah, well, people change.
Whether you're a longtime fan or just getting started, tune into our exclusive takes, fan theories, and so much more. Catch new episodes of Radioactive Ramblings every week, your go-to podcast for all things Invincible and more.
Think of a song you really love.
Don't you want to know why you love it so much?
Well, we can't answer that.
No, but we can deep dive into it anyway.
Unless we get too sidetracked.
We're the Nevermind the Music podcast.
One musician
and one psychologist
talking about iconic songs, the musical tricks that blow our minds,
and what they show us about our minds.
Join us each week as we pick apart everything from TLC to Weezer,
and from Billie Eilish to Bruno Mars, with plenty of distractions in between.
Check out Nevermind the Music, wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to the Lorehounds coverage of Season 3 of The Wheel of Time. I'm Elysia.
And I'm John. Hello again to those of you who listen to our book spoiler breakdown of the Season 3 trailer, which you'll find in this feed. Today, we're back to talk about Episode 1 of Season 3, To Race the Shadow.
For these episode breakdowns, we'll only talk spoilers up to the current episode. So for today, that means spoilers for the first 2 seasons of the TV show and the first episode of Season 3, and any equivalent book content, since John and I are both book readers. But we'll save any book spoiler discussion for our White Tower segment at the very end of the episode, after the outro music and ample spoiler warnings.
Subscribers, we've also put together a show guide for this season, which we will be updating weekly. All hail Hand of the Pod Nancy for all her help with that. Plus, we'll be putting out weekly lorecasts only for subscribers on either the season pass or the recurring subscription.
And if you're not a subscriber yet, stick around until the end of the episode for more information about that, plus a one-time season pass option for those of you who only want the extra Wheel of Time content. And this pass is going to also include content from last season, which was the first season the pod was around. But last season, John, you and David were doing the main episode recaps, and I was just joining you for the White Tower spoiler section at the end.
Yes, that's right. It was after Season 2 that you were christened a full Lorehound. And I know David's very happy because, well, he likes the Wheel of Time. He doesn't really love the Wheel of Time. So now we're going to have 2 super fans, as I'm calling us, talk about this show, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. We had to divide and conquer a lot this year because they've decided to release everything in the spring, all the shows.
Thank you, all the streamers, for doing this.
Yeah. So anyone new listening, if you go back and listen to the last season's content, you'll notice it's a slightly different format, slightly different people. Only those who have read the books will hear me. But I do, recommend checking that out if you haven't yet. And I especially recommend checking out, you guys did a really good interview with Michael Livingston about the origins of the Wheel of Time book.
Yeah, he's a really smart guy. I think maybe we'll invite him back at some point. I have his book, and I'm going to consult it throughout the season. If there's something there, I'm like, what's going on here? Are we pulling from some real world influence?
Yeah, it's a good shout. And also to point out that all of these public episodes will be in the public Lorehounds feed, but there is also a separate Wheel of Time feed if you only want Wheel of Time content.
And vice versa, if you're on the Wheel of Time feed and you're like, these guys are pretty good, then go over to the main Lorehounds feed. You'll get even more content, and all for free.
Yeah, and we'll talk more at the end of the episode about other stuff coming up, but it's going to be, we keep saying we're going to slow down, but the release gods are not letting us.
I've given up on that. Elysia, you and David have defeated me.
I mean, okay, the Oscars thing was out of control, but I can't control Mother Nature, and apparently, anyway, we won't
You
talk
can't
about
control the streamers.
And we can't
Especially
control the
Iger.
streamers.
I hold Iger like half responsible for this.
Oh yeah, he's responsible for a lot of the crunch that we're experiencing these coming months. But
Iger, always welcome on the pod if you want to talk about it. We'll work
defend
it out.
yourself. John, about the Wheel of Time, we've watched now the first episode, and we've agreed we're not going to watch ahead of the episode that we're recording about so that we're free to speculate. So what did you think about this first episode, and full spoilers for that episode?
I thought it was great. I really did. I was thrilled to be back in the world, of course, because I love the Wheel of Time generally. I'm back in Randland. But I also just thought this episode was even better than season 2 already.
Yeah.
I think they have nailed the chemistry in a way that they haven't before. There's been a little bit of like, weird like darkness and subversion of what you would expect between the Emond's Field 5 in past seasons. And I think they're finally moving past that. And I'm so glad that they are, because to me, the core of the Wheel of Time is the characters and the relationships. And if you can nail that, the magic, the main conflict is all secondary to what we're doing here. And so to watch, am I allowed to say spoilers yet?
Yeah, spoilers,
Okay.
Full spoilers.
When I'm watching Matt, Perrin, and Rand just like giggle together and be bros, I'm like, wow, they really like got the chemistry of these guys together. Just to see Rand laugh was such a welcome change.
Yeah.
Like I got really tired of mopey Rand last season. And I think we're moving past that a little bit. And I think that's a really good thing. Matt, they're finally nailing the humor with him. That was another thing that I think was not quite there last season. And they're really doing it this time. We're moving at this like crazy pace of the plot that I think is really, really good, because we have 14 books to get through. And they're also
15.
navigating the fact that they skip part of book 3 really well. I am impressed with how they are reordering the story a little bit.
Right. And especially with the factor of, where Matt had to be recast and thus missed out at the end of the first season, and they had to do some rejiggering of the plot. And I think they're handling that well.
Right.
Finally.
My one complaint is I still think Rafe wants this to be a little more Game of Thrones-y than the Wheel of Time really is. I just need like 3 intimate scenes in one episode. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not that kind of story. Like, it's fine.
It is. It has always been. There's so many sex scenes in the books, and all the spankings. At least they're not doing all the spankings.
Are there so many? I can think of one.
Yes, there are so many.
All right, fine. And one other thing I'll compliment though is that there are things that happen off camera, off camera metaphorically in the books that we are seeing on camera here that are just epic. Notably, the Black Aja battle. That's just glossed over in the book. They're like, yeah, and then the Black Aja attacked, and a lot of people died.
No, it's much better. I mean, obviously, that's smart to do as an adaptation for TV. Like, show us that.
Yeah. Like, don't skip over that. We want to see that.
Yeah. I would say, as far as what you said about it being a subversion of the Emond's Field 5 having strife and things like that, I actually think, I've been reading book 2 recently, and Rand is whiny, and he is constantly pushing his friends away. So I think that rather than it being a subversion in prior seasons, I think that what they have the opportunity to do now, and they did well in this first episode, is actually to kind of lighten that up versus the books a little bit, especially because things do have to move at a faster pace because, there's only so much screen time. I think I agree. They did a really great job just showing the connections between various people, and also just, they had a lot of nice moments with just 2 characters at a time in various groupings. So, like, for instance, there was a really nice conversation between Nynaeve and Matt, which might not be the first 2 characters you would think to pair based on what we've seen in the TV show, but we need to have all these different established relationships in our minds, especially as the characters part ways at the end of this episode.
Yeah, and I think that's what was my biggest complaint about season 1 is they didn't set a foundation for the relationships of these characters.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my biggest beef. And they didn't really go back and do that in season 2 either. So I'm glad that we're kind of starting to do that now. I wish we had done it sooner, but I think it's good to do it whenever you can do it. I just think, you have this journey, which the first book of the Wheel of Time, the first season of the Wheel of Time, really is very closely tracked to the story of the Lord of the Rings, right? And you need the Shire to be established. You need that home to be comfortable. When Rand says in this episode, I want to go home. Like, why would you want to go home? It seemed pretty crappy in episode 1. I wouldn't want to live in the Emond's Field of episode 1 of the Wheel of Time. Even
before the Trollocs came.
No, even prior to that. I was like,
why?
This is kind of...
You don't want to live in an idyllic country town where...
I didn't get the vibe of that. I saw a woman get pushed off a cliff. I saw...
She survived. She's fine. She got her hair braided.
And anyway, my point is I didn't feel like they set the foundation. You have to earn those character moments, right? You have to, if you want me to be upset that Rand is being a dick to his friends in season 2, you need to give me a season 1 where they're best buds.
Right.
And I didn't get that. We did get that in the book of book 1. So again, I don't want to keep complaining about season 1 because that's just exhausting. But I'm glad, what I'm saying is I'm glad that we're catching up now on that relationship building.
Okay. Again, I'm just putting it out there for those listeners at home. I love season 1. I do think it's continuously improved since then, but I think season 1 had a really strong start. The first episode was a strong start, but there was also, in addition to the COVID stuff, that took a toll later in the season. At the start of the season, there was also the toll taken that they were told at one point, basically, they had to cut back on the amount of material they had. They thought they were going to be able to do more episodes. And the episodes in the first season were shorter. This episode was 1 hour and 9 minutes long, which is almost...
Was that with everything? Like with the
with the credits. And
okay.
Yeah, and the promo. Yeah. So the first season was much shorter. And now the last season, every episode was about 1 hour. This season, I think it's fair to say that people can expect the same. They just they're being given more screen time and they're making use of those extra minutes. And you could really feel that this first episode there was so much going on. I messaged you. I was like, oh, they're like, let us go. We've got places to go this season.
What was your take on this episode?
Well, I mean, I've been saying my take, but
I'm formally inviting you now.
I'll just add to it that the costumes continue to blow me away. So kudos to Sharon Gillam, the costume designer. And I forgot to write down the name of the person who does specifically the hair, the wigs, but that was also really noteworthy. I liked what they did with Egwene's wigs. Although, did you think that Egwene this episode was looking a lot like Min is described in the books?
I did not have that thought.
She has the short hair, she's wearing the pants, she with the vest and stuff. She looked very Min-like to me.
You think they're giving her some of Min's characteristics? I mean, they introduced Min.
Yeah, Min's in. She wasn't in this episode, but she's in the show. She'll be around this season. Yeah. But yeah, I noticed that. But the part that struck me the most, I guess, was when Egwene, we'll talk about it, of course, but Egwene does her testing and she goes through the arches and we see an alternate world where she's Emerald Seat. The hair and the costumes in that scene are just chef's kiss.
Yeah, especially Dark Rand.
Yeah, hippie. I like Dark
his
Rand.
hair.
Yeah.
Pow!
Yeah.
I can I just say, like, Joshua Stradowski, I was a little dubious. Yeah. I was a little dubious of his acting in season 1 and a little bit in season 2. I thought he got better in season 2.
Okay.
This one, I thought he nailed this episode. I think I really needed to see Rand laugh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt your take. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just saying it's Yosha, by the way. He's Dutch.
It's Yosha?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I apologize that during my insulting section, I mispronounced your name, Yosha.
I thought he did a great job. But yeah, let's get into our breakdown of episode 1 of season 3, To Race the Shadow. This was written by Justine Jewel Gilmer, who she also wrote episode 6 of season 1, The Flame of Tar Valon, and episode 7 of season 2, Daes Daimar, and she's going to be writing this season's finale. And the director is Ciaran Donnelly, who directed the last 2 seasons of season 1, which, that was a rough task because I remember I was watching that. I was watching with my friends and we were like, oh, how convenient that the murder holes are 1.5 meters apart,
Honestly, I don't blame him for that. This was just an unfortunate time in filmmaking, and he did the best he could. I would have perhaps changed some of the writing there, but I don't think you can blame him for that either.
Yeah, I mean, it was apparently they were, Amazon was putting them under pressure too because they had been away for months. And so there was actually writing being done on the morning of on the set as they're trying to adjust to the demands of the COVID regulations. And it was just a mess. Yeah. I give a lot of passes.
And it shows, but it's all right.
I give a lot of passes to the season 1 finale for that reason.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. But so we should say also that this episode, the first episode, we won't drop this episode, our breakdown of it until, it officially airs on the 13th. But a lot of people did watch this a week early at an online fan event on March 8th. Oh. And there are others who watched this even earlier at a London screening. So people who watched this even before we're recording now. So, yeah.
Right. We're recording here on March 6th. So we're a little before, about a week before the episode premieres.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So this opens. So Rafe Judkins, the showrunner, he promised that season 3 would open with 20 minutes of middle-aged women shredding each other, and he delivered that. That's what happened.
I didn't realize that was a promise. He did also promise, and I think we're realizing this now that I've seen one episode. And by the way, we do have screeners, but we're not watching ahead. So we are speculating in good faith. But he said that this was going to be book 4. Like this was going to be the Shadow Rising. And I'm glad we're dedicating a full season to that story because I recently reread it and my God, is it packed.
Yeah.
It's like probably the most packed book. It's got like a bunch of different major events that all happen at the same time. And I'm glad that we're really going to slow down and do this.
Yeah. And stick around until after the outro music if you want book spoilers where we discuss what those events are, some of them at least.
Yeah.
But yeah, we start with this massive set piece that goes on for, indeed, about 20 minutes. So this is the largest section, just to recap that quickly. Following the events of the season 2 finale, our characters have returned to the White Tower of Tar Valon, home of the Aes Sedai sorceresses. Last season, Red Aja member Liandrin Sedai kidnapped Nynaeve, an accepted level Aes Sedai in training, and Elaine, a novice who also happens to be the daughter heir to the Queendom of Andor, and sold them to slave-owning foreign invaders known as the Shan-Chen. The Hall has gathered to confront Liandrin, who is known to be sworn to the dark. Although the rest of the Red Aja is kept out of the hall, the sitters and other sisters are surprised by the reveal that at least one sitter in each of the Ajas is also a dark friend. A bloody battle breaks out in the hall with many casualties, and the sisters chase their dark counterparts out into the city streets where battle continues. Meanwhile, Brown sister Varen Sedai leads her blood sister Adeleas and trusted friend Naomi to the secret 13th depository where the Aes Sedai's greatest objects of the power are kept. Once there, Naomi reveals herself to also be a Black sister, knocking out Viren and Adeleas with a special weave and stealing everything she can carry. When Viren and Adeleas wake up later, Adeleas has lost her memory. Outside, Naomi rejoins the other Black sisters who save Liandrin from being killed. They then try to shield Swan, the Amerlin Seat who leads the tower, but she is saved by her estranged lover Moraine. The Black sisters kill Ivan, one of Green sister Alana's warders, and escape with the stolen objects of power. So we saw the first 10 minutes of this were released early on Prime and for like a week on YouTube. Did you watch that before watching this?
I did. I saw a lot ago, you will not leave here alive. And then of course we cut to black and you're like, what's going to happen next? But, We thankfully didn't have to wait as long as everybody else, but it was still like, oh, that was a good cliffhanger. Man, I loved seeing the Green Aja, which for those who haven't read the books, the Green Aja is the battle Aja. They are the Aja that is supposed to be like the most battle ready, warlike. They're not supposed to do anything with that, but they're supposed to be trained to like fight the shadow at a moment's notice. And we see that happen here. Like, oh my God, Alana was such a badass in this scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the cool thing was that, so we got that 10-minute preview and then that cliffhanger, and then, you continue watching, and it actually just even amps up more.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's less brutal after that, but it's more intense.
Yeah, well, it was like there was a moment where Leandrin almost, it looks like she might die. I was like, oh my God, what if, because, they have killed characters that didn't die at this point in the book. See, last season. Yeah. So I'm like, oh my God, what if they kill Leandrin?
I thought that too. I was like, are they going to do this?
Yeah. And I was like, part of me, I'm like, wait, am I rooting for Leandrin to live? What the hell?
Honestly, like, I could see them be doing a little bit of like give this character a different plot lines and whatnot and writing out Leandrin. So that was realistic. So I think that is an exciting thing for book readers to not know if they're going to make major changes like that.
Yeah, because they have before, and I'm certain they will again. Actually, we see something later this episode that also is a major change, I think. Yeah. And just to say that, so we are doing extra lore casts for subscribers, and our first lore cast is going to be going deeper into the Aja system and the role the Black Aja plays in it. So we'll go into all the details there, but suffice it to say, it's an extra status basically. So you're never only Black Aja, you're publicly a member of another Aja as well.
Right. You wear a mask of another Aja, sort of. But I think that's going to be a really fun podcast. But we're not going to like withhold knowledge here, so that's why we're talking about the green being battle Aja, the black Aja being the evil dark Aja.
Right. We'll just add to it there. We'll just go a little deeper. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I loved that moment of confrontation that's with Swan and Leandrin. I did a timestamp here if you want to sound clip it, but Swan says, "You have betrayed us all, and now you will be tried, stilled, and give up every member of the Black Aja before you die." And I love Leandrin says, "You're right, I will." And she's basically telling all the other Black sisters in the hall, like, "I'm going to give you up." And she says, "Join me." And that's when battle commences.
I can't sound clip that because you did it so well. I have to leave it
Okay. It wasn't, so we had a lot of Black sister reveals in this episode, and it was interesting because Leandrin, obviously, even show only watchers know from the end of last season, Leandrin is, sworn to the dark. We saw that, and so she walks in with this half black, half red dress, and it's like, settle, Leandrin. But then, as a book reader, I kind of know what's about to happen in this confrontation. I know that more Black sisters are going to step up. So I'm looking around and you see, oh, this sister has a black vest on. This sister has a black belt on. Like, oh, how cute. They're identifying themselves. Those are the sisters that are going to step up. But then twice as many as that stand up as Black Aja. So even as a book reader, I was surprised how many sisters were involved.
Yeah, and I don't remember who said it, but somebody went, how are so many of our sisters sworn to the shadow?
Yeah. Yep.
It's shocking, right? Because this is something that the Aes Sedai have denied forever. They've always been like, there is no Black Aja, there is no war in Ba Sing Se for our Avatar The Last Airbender fans. The complete denial that this could possibly exist. And Aes Sedai would never swear to the shadow. That's only something that normies do. And this is part of that Aes Sedai hubris and elitism that gets them into trouble a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And they did, they pulled a lot of names from the book of actual sisters who are Black Aja sisters in the book. And most of it, they all pretty much escaped. Yeah, they all did. So we are going to be seeing more of them. So that was Leandrin, of course, who is red. Naomi was a new character for the show. She was brown. That was the one that shocked me the most. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't been like following her that closely. I didn't do a rewatch of season 2 before this, and I probably should have. But yeah, I mean, I knew that when they got to the 13th depository, something was going to go wrong because of what happens in the book. That's not quite how it happened. it's not quite how it happened because we didn't really get a big description of the book. We just got told they stole Terangriel. But yeah, I just think that I was surprised by all of them, really.
Yeah.
I was not surprised that they were there. I was surprised at who a lot of the time.
I mean, Naomi, because like last season, I was really into the Brown sister bonding, and Naomi was an important part of that. So that was really like, oh, not you. But there were others, like Joya is a Grey sister, and she, last season, I was already saying in our White Tower segments, I was like, yeah, pay attention to Joya. She's Black Aja. That is known. So it wasn't surprised to see her step up.
Right.
That green that came up, Jean Cade, she, is also Black Aja in the book. Chesmal Enmery, yellow. Amiko Nagoyan, yellow. They all made it out. And Ispan Shefar, blue. So those are all the sisters that made it out together. And we're going to be following what they do after this. We know based on the trailer they show at the end of the episode.
Yeah. And something that I'll say is, I know Marilyn was saying, like, is every person you don't like a dark friend?
Yeah.
And I see that's your next bullet point here. So I guess you should probably just go along with that.
No, I mean, yeah, but that was exactly the point, is that so we see two red sitters, Tsutsama and Amira, who are being barred from going into the hall, and by Alana's warders. And Alana's warders are like, no, you can't go in. They're like, you fools, you're going to let your sisters die. And it's their prejudice. And then Jean walks up, and they are immediately like, oh, green sister, you're good. And it turns out Jean is the Black Aja, and the red sisters really were probably just going to jump in and try to help, fight the Black Aja, because just because you don't like someone doesn't mean they're evil.
Right. And this also is sort of a subversion of something that we see a lot of, obviously they came out in opposite order, like the Wheel of Time came out first, but Harry Potter, a lot of people bring up like the Slytherins of Harry Potter. There's not a wizard who went bad who wasn't from Slytherin, right?
Right.
And so you start reading this and you're like, is the Red Aja sort of the Slytherin of the Aes Sedai? And no, they're not. Because, yeah, you might disagree with them. I certainly disagree with them on their approach to a lot of things. And I think that there's a lot of consequences of their actions that are negative. But there's dark wizards. There's dark Aes Sedai in every single Aja. Even the yellows, like the healing Aja, like what? It's crazy. They're all over the place, and that's why it's almost scarier, because you never know who could be. And I think something we have to watch out for this season is what's Swan going to do to root out the Black Aja.
Right. And I think that's why Naomi, the brown sister they added, who isn't in the books, was a good one, because they showed, this bonding with the other brown sisters, and they all look so sweet together. And then, we see Viren later this episode says to Moraine, like, I watched her grow from girlhood, because again, reminder, Aes Sedai age very, very slowly. So
right.
Viren she hasn't said how old she is, but let's assume at least a century.
Right. If she's already starting to have like gray hair, then a lot. A lot to vary.
Yeah.
Can I ask, why did the weave affect Varen differently than Adelaus?
She blocked. She threw up her hand, and you could see like a little
I didn't notice
block
that
go out. Yeah. So it knocked her out, but she didn't lose her memory.
Okay.
Whereas
right,
Adelaus was caught unawares, and her hands were by her side.
So sad, Adelaus.
Yeah, so speaking of the 13th depository, so in this, it's a slight difference from the show to the books. In the books, the 13th depository is specifically a library of secret histories, so books. And there is also a stash of these Sa'angreal and Terangreal, which, do you want to remind people what those are?
No, I'm just kidding. The Sa'angreal. So they're combining the Sa'angreal and the regular Angreal, right?
Yeah. To simplify.
Yeah. So the Sa'angreal are objects that can amplify your ability to use the one power. And so that means if I can hold 10 units of the one power, I can hold like 100 units of the one power. Like that's an exaggeration in some ways, but it can be that much depending on the power of the Angreal or Sa'angreal. The Terangreal is an object that may or may not require the use of the power, but it uses the one power to do a specific thing. Like it only does one thing. It's a one-trick tool.
Right. Right. Like we think when Moraine travels to see Swan in their little love nest, that's a ter'angreal that they're using that just has the express purpose of taking them to this location.
Right. Yeah. There are a ton of different ter'angreal, and the problem is often people won't know what they do, and so they try to use them and then they get hurt because you just don't know what's going to happen.
Right. Like the archways that we see Egwene go through for the testing are ter'angreals.
Right. And those ones do require use of the one power, like somebody to channel it into them, but some of them don't. And that's something important to remember too. Like people who can't channel can sometimes use ter'angreal depending on which one it is. Right.
And all of these things. So, and then the Angreal are like lesser sa'angreal. So, and they just amplify your power. So, Angreal amplify your power, sa'angreal amplify your power more. It seems like in the show, they're just calling them all sa'angreal, which makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I think it's fine. I do think the show could trust its audience a little bit more. I think it dumbs it down a little bit too much sometimes, but
I mean, they're throwing so much lore at people. I know that people were overwhelmed in the first seasons by it. I don't blame them.
Yeah, right. Right.
This doesn't change anything.
You know, you look at Game of Thrones and like that gets complicated too. Like how many Aegons
But they
do
also
we have?
cut out so much lore in Game of Thrones and characters. I'm still bitter about some of the characters they cut.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I just think we can trust our audience just a little bit more than we do in this show.
I don't know, because I know people have been also lost on the other hand. So I think they strike the right balance.
Okay.
But just to point out some key things that they zoomed in on that we saw Naomi stealing. So there was a little statue that I think is a sa'angreal from the books. There's an armband that we know from previews is going to be important this season. And one other thing, she couldn't have possibly stolen this, but in the back, this is very important to book readers, and we'll talk about this more in the White Tower section. There is a twisted red door frame in the back of this room with snakes and foxes carved into it.
Yep. Just watch it. That's all you need to know for now.
Yeah, just that's there. That's a thing that's there, and
Yep.
Yeah. What did you think of we saw some interaction between Moraine again. She cannot enter the tower because of that oath she swore to Swan in season 1, which, by the way, that episode was written by the same writer as this episode. But we do see her help Swan in the city. What did you think of that non-reunion?
Reunited and feel so good. Yeah, I don't know if either of them felt very good about it. I think Moraine wishes she could, just be with Swan and here's the thing is I feel like if they had not witnessed the prophecy, which we saw this happen in season 1, there was a flashback, season 2 rather. If they had not heard that prophecy together, that like the Dragon Reborn was being born, I think they might have just been green and been each other's partners and would have like lived a very peaceful life just in the White Tower.
Right.
Whereas now they are more wedded to the cause than they are to each other. And that's just sad. That's just sad. And I think they're finally seeing, obviously it's kept them apart like at a physical distance before, but this is the first time a disagreement in how to approach this goal has really emotionally torn them apart.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see, especially with that oath still hanging over Moraine's head. It'll be interesting to see if that plays out in a certain kind of way. And just what happens with Swan overall, because I keep saying, I wonder if her story is going to go a little differently than in the books.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of differently from the books, I do have questions about how a shield is cut in the show universe. What was your understanding of so the Black Sisters shielded Swan and they were going to drop some stuff on her, but Moraine stopped them from dropping like a building on her and saved her like that. But then did they loosen up their shield enough that she cut her way out, or did Moraine do something, or how did that work?
I think she was starting to cut her way out, and that's why they said we have to kill her. We can't just keep doing this. I was a little bothered by this because it's a very clear point in the books that you cannot break out of an active shield. So something that a person is actively maintaining, you just can't break out of that. You can break out in other circumstances sometimes. And that's possible. And I'm not going to go deep into that because it might be a spoiler later. I don't know if they're actually going to do this because of the way they're changing this. But there should be no way to get out of this if you're going straight with book lore.
But then again, we did see Logain was able to break out of a shield that was being held by multiple sisters in season 1. And that was an indication of the strength of his power. Yeah,
which I also think breaks lore. I just think they both can be true.
I'm saying it's internally consistent then, at least for this show. I'm accepting that the show lore is going to be a bit different than book lore.
Yeah, that's fine.
As long as it makes sense internally.
It bothered me a little bit, but then I just moved on. Like, I actually forgot about this until you just asked me about it.
Sorry.
Even though I complained about it to you when I read it. when I watched it, rather.
Yeah. So another point that they make sure to emphasize this episode is that Nynaeve, she has this blocking channel that she can only channel when in the books it's often when she's angry. Here she's feeling fear when the Black Aja attacks, and she just freezes up and cannot call on the power.
She's not hulking out. She's can't hulk out. She needs to take some advice from no, I can't remember the name of the guy who plays the Hulk now. Mark Ruffalo. She's got to get some lessons from Mark Ruffalo.
Well, yeah, he's always reverting. I don't know if she can do better. Maybe she needs some advice from Jen from She-Hulk. She does better at managing that.
I have not gotten up to it in my chronological watch of the MCU. I have to do it. I know I'll like it. I've heard good things.
It's fun. It's fun.
I'm not up to it yet.
Okay. Speaking of green women, Alana, she lost a warder this episode, Ivan. So they recast the Ivan actor, and I had a feeling that he was going to go down, especially when he didn't appear in the posters for the season. But it was kind of, so I understand they recast because I think the original Ivan actor was busy. He had a scheduling conflict, and it's like, well, we're just going to bring you back to kill you. So might as well bring in another actor. And I get that completely. But part of me was like, well, it just lessened the impact slightly just because I can squint and pretend that's the same actor, but it's not. And I really liked Ivan, especially last season. He said a lot of interesting things, and I'm sad about him being gone, but it felt like a different person because he was only there for a second.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I do think that this is going to serve the story. This death will serve the story. It's not just going to be a meaningless death.
No.
So I'm looking forward to seeing the outcome of that. But it was sad to see the loss of a warder, and we saw the opposite last season. Not last season, season 1. We saw a warder grieving an Aes Sedai because once one person on the side of that bond dies, that like shatters the person on the other side. It's like losing a part of yourself. So I wonder how deep they're going to go into Alana's response this season.
Yeah. And I think, there were book readers who were upset that they spent a whole episode on showing, how Stepan responded to his warder Karene dying. And I think this shows that they were doing that for a reason. They're laying important groundwork. But then what a chilling contrast with that green black sister, Jean, who I guess both of her warders are killed. And she's like, she likes it, in like a sadomasochistic way.
Yep. It's very chilling as you write here. One thing I want to ask is it appears that one warder can feel the other.
Yes. Yeah, they did establish that in previous seasons. That's different.
Yeah. It is a change. I think it's fine. It doesn't really bother me. It's interesting.
Yeah, well, I thought it made sense, especially for, played a role in the throuple of Alana and Maxim and Ivan. So I thought it made sense there.
My advice to you, I did watch the first season of season 2, episode 1, or the first episode of season 2, and I'm planning to watch the rest of them soon. I just need to make time for it. But I love the scene where Egwene goes like, I needed your advice, and she's like, my advice is to focus on your own pleasure first. And she's like, about the weave, I need your advice about the weave.
Alana was a badass this episode, though, by the way. I love how she channeled an arm blade. Did you see that? It was like a blade coming off of her hand, like she was going to punch someone with a sword of the power.
Well, I saw this as a callback to Leandrin in season 2, episode 1, which is Leandrin makes a blade. She goes, and Nynaeve, you're training with these swords. Swords are useless. I can make a sword right now out of air.
Right.
And then she does it, and she goes, but this is useless too. This is still like a limitation because it's attached to me, basically. And I was like, oh, but this Battle Aja member, this Alana here, is doing it and putting a limitation on herself. Like, there was nothing stopping her from just pushing that blade forward with the air. But she didn't. She put herself in a situation where she had to physically move her arm forward.
Yeah, because I think she just really wanted to punch the shit out of the person who killed her boarder,
Yeah, but I mean, I understand the emotion of it.
Blade, yeah.
I'm just.
It wasn't a logical move. It wasn't a logical move. Yeah, it was purely driven by rage and hurt. Yeah. Yeah, I did like to see Lyanna, the Keeper of the Chronicles, stepping up more this season. She's been a little too much in the background for me. I mean, she got a bit more attention in season 2, but this season I'm expecting to see more of her.
She's in the background a while in the books too, and then she comes out a little bit more. So I think that's fine.
Yeah. Did you have any other thoughts about this opening brawl?
I don't think so. We spent 40 minutes talking about it. I think we did it.
All right. This is probably a good place to take a quick break, and we'll come back and talk about the rest of the episode.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, and we're back. And so we're going to be talking about basically one plot arc at a time rather than scene by scene. So we're going to start with a discussion that was going on throughout the episode, this talk of the city of Tyr, city/nation of Tyr. I think, Tyr is it's like a New York kind of situation, right? Where the capital city and the nation are the same name.
Mm-hmm.
So Moiraine and Lanfear are secretly still working together, both trying to push Rand to go to the southern city of Tyr, where a prophecy says that he will claim a sword called Kalandor and conquer the unconquerable fortress there, the first of many nations he will one day rule. Moiraine has arranged a ship to take them there. And so, one thing about this show that I really wish they would implement is maps.
Like the Rings of Power maps where they're guiding you across. Yeah, that would be helpful.
That was Rings of Power did it especially well, or Game of Thrones, and maybe they don't want to feel like they're copying. But hey, Rings of Power is also an Amazon show, so. But for anyone who doesn't know, Tyr, it's on the southernmost coast, and that's where Swan is from. So we saw Tyr in flashbacks when we saw her as a child. If you look in the background there's a sort of fortress sticking up in the background. That's a stone of Tyr. And that's also the location of her secret love shack with Moiraine that we were just referencing. John, what is the Carathian cycle, since that comes up this episode again?
The Carathian cycle is a set of prophecies, essentially, about the Dragon Reborn. They're the prophecies of the dragon.
Yeah. Yeah, like saying that he would be reborn on Dragon Mount, which we saw in previous seasons, that is indeed where Rand was born.
Right. It's often also the opening quote for a lot of the books. Some of them are like commentary on it, and then some of them are from the Carathian cycle directly, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that this is also with saying that he's going to go to Tyr and get this sword. But they added something for the show. It's not in the books. Rand says to Moiraine, they say Luz Theron put Kalandor in the Stone of Tyr, which is interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we ever got the origin of Kalandor in the books, so I think that's fine.
No, not exactly. No. Yeah. But then, so they set it all up like they're going to go to Tyr, which is indeed what they do at this point in the books. But then, in the TV show, there's just too many locations for one season of television. So they're like, well, and we've reminded you Tyr is there and this is a goal, but we're going to sidestep and go somewhere else instead. So
I'm glad they name dropped Kalandor. Mm-hmm. Kalandor is important, but I'm also glad that we're doing full Shadow Rising now.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're going to, some of the plots that happen in Tyr, they are clearly setting them up, but they'll just happen elsewhere with like the Black Aja and things like that. So
Yeah.
that makes sense. I guess we should point out there's a lot of Arthurian references in this, and that's because, it's the Wheel of Time reincarnation. There is Tom Merlin is also Merlin, a reborn
but
version.
so is the Amerlin.
Right, true.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. And again, I'll plug Origins of the Wheel of Time has a glossary of all these, and he will and Michael Livingston will talk about like where all these names came from. Because it's funny that Tolkien is known as like this great writer who wanted to bring back English culture, like Anglican culture. But Robert Jordan pulled way more from Arthurian legends than Tolkien ever did.
Yeah, and including this Kalendor, the sword in the stone of Tyr. It's obviously Excalibur from Arthurian legend. So, and it's mentioned, it is one of the most powerful Sa'angreal, so amplifying your power. And we see, because we can read the subtitles, we see that Matt says in the old tongue, the sword that is not a sword. So they don't hear that. Only Matt understands that, and us, because we have magic subtitle reading abilities.
So this is a new thing that they're introducing, is that Matt has these memories, Matt has this old tongue, and they're changing how he got it from the books. In the books, he that dagger from season 1 that they kind of like hand waved away. When he gets healed from that, finally, he suddenly has all these memories. And he has the old tongue.
Like they healed him so good, he's remembering past lives now.
Yeah. Although it was sort of a 2-step regaining of the memories.
Right.
But that was what triggered the first step.
Yeah, and in here it's because he blew the horn and found out, the fact him being a hero of the horn himself is something that's kind of teased, half implied. You can interpret it as you will in the books. And here they explicitly state, like, yes, Matt is a hero of the horn. His life is bound to it. And now you see him clinging to it kind of in the way that he was clinging to the dagger in the books at this point, where the dagger was a 2-step healing process. So we saw step 1, and then I think they're just doing away with step 2, and they're making it about him and the horn this season instead.
Yeah. I do like Matt as a hero of the horn. I think that's a good change. Again, like you said, it's not really neither confirmed nor denied in the books. So it's good. It's good. I like Matt. He has a heroic personality in that he is a goofball that can be so serious when he needs to be. Right.
Yeah, and it's important that he points out to Nynaeve that he can remember many, many ancient battles in his head. So that's a plot point that will come up. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I also want to point out that Elaine tells Rand that she sent a letter to a Terran noblewoman who is friends with her mother, who, again, her mother's the Queen of Andor, another nation further north, closer to Tar-Valon. So basically a letter of introduction saying, like, help Rand, the Dragon Reborn.
I don't know if this was the greatest move, Elaine. Like, hello, Tyran woman. You are about to be invaded. Good luck.
Yeah, in some way or another, that letter's definitely going to come back. We're going to find out. Yeah. But I did like her interaction with Rand, where because she has been raised to rule. She's been taught about politics her entire life. And Rand has not. Rand was raised to be a sheep herder.
Right, exactly.
So she says, having power means accepting that any decision which helps some will hurt others. That's the truth of ruling nations. That and knowing who to trust. So again, this is another one of those pair-up moments where they're laying a foundation of, setting her as someone who Rand might turn to for guidance in this area.
Yeah, political advisor, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, and she's also the one who nudges Rand toward, maybe you want to gather this Aiel army that the Aiel keeps saying technically is yours once you learn their ways.
It's a conditional acceptance.
Yeah.
He's got to go to Roidion. Oh my God, I can never say it. Roidion.
Yeah, and but they want to have one last day about town. So, with the group set to either return to the tower or head their separate directions in the morning, almost everyone decides to hit the town for a little last fun. Rand, Matt, and Perrin grab drinks, with Matt hiring an artist to draw him posing with the horn, and images of the story of Rand fighting Ishamael on top of the tower in Falm in last season's finale. Rand can't shake the 3 Aiel maidens of the spear, are Avienda, Bane, and Chiad, who believe him to be the Aiel Karakarn, their chief of chiefs, and are determined to protect him, especially as he seems a bit like a bumbling idiot to them right now.
You know, I did enjoy this scene. Avienda sassing Rand, great stuff.
Mhm.
Great stuff. I laughed out loud when Moraine goes, make sure you're careful about what you look like, what you say, what you do. And Matt goes, I, Matt Cawthon of the Two Rivers, blowing the horn of Valir.
Just waving
and
it around.
Rand al'Thor in the sky. Like,
Matt. Yeah.
but neither of the other ones actually like bat an eye at this, which is pretty funny. Like, I was like, I thought one of them at least would have been like, Matt, like let's chill out for a minute, but they're like, yeah, go ahead, pose with the horn.
Well, I think because they are still the country bumpkins. Like they've played down the country bumpkin aspect versus the books, but they are still like they don't really understand celebrity at this point. Like I think that that's going to be something that catches up with them as their fame grows, and obviously. Yeah. Having pictures circulating about them in this stuff is definitely gonna do something in that direction. But I think they just don't realize how conspicuous they are.
I think that's right. And but also they're also being like bro. Like you ever watch How I Met Your Mother? They have this joke about revertigo.
I don't remember.
This is this joke that like when you're with friends from like your childhood, you will revert to the person you were as a child. Yeah. Like your high school self or something like that. And so I feel like these 3 all get revertigo when they're together. And I loved watching it. Like the way that Celine, the way they say that together. It was so good. It was so good. And this is what I needed. This is what I'm saying. I needed to see like, if we're going to go through hard times together, I need to know why you love each other. Right. And I didn't see that before now as much.
Yeah. I do. I like that Matt has become full Matt, which to be fair, he's not full Matt until at least like book 3 anyway. So
yeah, that's right.
But
he's very whiny in book 2.
Yeah. The whole dagger thing. Ugh. I honestly don't mind that they cut that story short. But yeah, we see also an iconic scene. It's in a different place because Matt's not going to the Aiel Waste with them. But this Maiden's Kiss scene is an iconic one from the book. So what's the Maiden's Kiss story?
You want me to recount the Maiden's Kiss?
Yeah, how the game works.
They explained it pretty well in the show. Is they put the spears to your neck and they kiss you. And if you do well, they take a step back. If you don't do well, you see what happens.
So we should take away from this that Matt's not a great kisser because he had blood running down his neck after that.
That's right. But I do love when Nynaeve asks him like what happened. He goes, "Gentleman never tells."
I do wonder. So there is a character in the books. We've mentioned him before. Gaul. He was an Aiel character who Avienda has been given a lot of his parts so far in the story, and I understand they're cutting back on characters because there's so many in the books. A lot of people were sad to see that one in particular go, and he also has an interesting relationship with Bane and Chiad. I wonder if they're going to transfer any of that story to Matt.
Yeah, it could be. Again, I got some flack for calling certain character stories boring on our preview episode. I'm gonna add Gaul to my list of characters I think have kind of boring arcs.
I like Gaul, but I also understand. I mean, but it's funny because there are like characters you can do away with that I'll be really upset if there's no Eludra. I'm not going to tell you who she is, but she better show up.
Yeah, I would like Eludra to show up, but I
can also understand that, if you're cutting extraneous storylines, yeah, there's got to be also just a case of like fan favoritedness.
Yeah. Yep.
Like some characters just need to be there because they're cool, okay?
Look, if I don't get Bail Doman speaking in the most ridiculous accent we can find.
Hey, we got it. We got that already last season.
I
so
know,
we
I
should
know.
get more.
I'm
We
saying
should
like
get
if
more.
I don't get more of that.
With Eganin, who is essential.
Yeah, I got some tweets about that, or not tweets,
Oh, did
blue
you?
skies about that.
Did you?
Yeah.
I will defend her. But yeah, we also see now Perrin's gone full golden eyes, but we didn't get any references to that because I don't mind if he's like, we saw him struggle with that wolf nature last season. I would love to just see him full on embracing it more this season.
Yeah, that is something they could cut down on in the show, is this whole like, I don't want it.
Yeah.
The Jon Snow I don't want it thing, like
refusing the call to adventure. Yeah,
that happens for so long for each character in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we could do with less of that. That is something that I think Robert Jordan milks a little bit too much.
Yeah. Yep. Well, meanwhile, while these characters are carousing, Egwene sticks around to talk to Swan. Swan tells Egwene that if she leaves Tarvalon as a novice without the serpent ring of at least an accepted, she will never be allowed to return. So Egwene demands that she be given her accepted test immediately. And we see her undergo the same process that Nynaeve did last season, entering 3 successive arches where she will forget herself in different lives, and she must make it back out of all 3 to pass the test. We see one arch shows her a world where she is the Amerlin seat and must gentle Rand, who has gone mad and killed Perrin and Mat. And we do not see what she experiences in the other 2 arches, but having passed the test and earned her serpent ring, Egwene informs the Aes Sedai that she will be leaving the city.
Yeah, I could have seen that one coming.
Yeah, I was surprised that, because this is one of the things where like, oh, we have to see Egwene's accepted test. And this was one of the ones where like, I was like, oh, they're doing this episode already? Just, okay, we're moving along.
Yeah, they didn't even do an intermediary scene, I don't think, right? They just went right in.
Yeah. Like you saw this last season, you know how this works. Okay, she's done it now too.
Yeah, I liked it, and I watched this episode twice, and I think on second watch, I was even more like enjoying things because I understood what the pace was going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, and the other thing I would point out about this scene is that so there are always 3 sisters there who are guiding the testing novice through the test, and so we had Swan, we had Leanne, and the third sister they called Alviarin, and Alviarin, I'll just say, this is a new sister for the show. In the books, she's the only, if you're like, who's in the white Aja? I'm like, Alviarin, and I cannot remember anyone else.
Right.
So pay attention to Alviarin.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And then we get our one last round of hookups, where the gang makes use of their last night of freedom to couple up Lan and Nynaeve, Rand and Egwene, and new flirty coupling Elaine and Avienda. I'm like, so I brought this up in the preview episode.
You did.
Called it.
Look, I said like I don't really care either way.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't read it in the books, but like, yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
I mean, I'll just say this is one where, I brought it up in the preview episode, and there were other people who, in Blue Sky were agreeing with me that they read it that way in the books. So it's not just like a me thing that these characters.
No, I believe you. I believe you.
I just want to point out, I like to call them Elaine Vienda, but other people call them Avi Lane. So just, I understand.
Neither is good.
I like Elaine Vienda. I think it's brilliant. And I liked how Elaine, echoing Lanfear last season, Elaine, when Avienda kisses her, says, finally.
Yeah, I think this is fine. In general, I think the show could do with less sexing up. Like, I don't need Rand to have sex with every single woman he meets, and so far that's basically what's happened.
I mean, that's what happens in the books.
Is it?
Yes.
No, it is not. No, it is not.
Yes, even
he was never intimate with Egwene in the books at this point, I'm going to say.
I mean, but that's because they were treated as younger and more naive in general. But they were considered betrothed.
Lanfear is an addition.
Lanfear's not an addition. She was always in love with him in the book.
Yeah, but not but they never did the deed.
Sure,
at this
they.
point, at least.
I feel like you've just been like reading over all the very many sex scenes in the books.
They're not all right.
And
maybe
people,
maybe I need things to be more explicit to get it. But I was like, I just. It's not. It's again. I'm not objecting to specific couplings. I'm just like, why does again? I just think it's the Game of Thronesification. Like, let this show be its own thing. Making a sex scene, I think it's a mistake to assume that adding sex scenes. But it is its own
thing because it's following the books. It's just
I just want to say that I think that there is a misconception of these writers that adding sex scenes makes a more mature show. And what makes a more mature show is having more complex emotional arrangements and having detailed and serious relationships between characters.
Yes, which includes often sex.
Yes, but can't only include sex.
It doesn't only include sex. Like we were just talking about Matt and Nynaeve. I'm sorry, spoiler alert, they're not going to have sex. But we got to see a nice bonding moment between them.
And that's what I mean. Like I want more of that stuff too. And more of like the intimacy between the three boys. Like I do think that this show has needed more. I'm trying to drill down to what my actual complaint is. My actual complaint is I think the show needs more intimacy total and less sex total. Do you know what I mean? Like we are too focused on physical intimacy and not enough focus on like building the relationships between these characters.
I understand the point you're making. I just completely disagree with it.
Okay. All right.
I mean,
that's
because
fine.
and I'm not saying that there is a world where, you know, we were complaining with Dune Prophecy that there were sex scenes that just felt thrown in for the sake of sex scenes. And that was an HBO show. But yes, so I think that can be a problem. But in this case, particularly if you were to ask me going in, you're like, Elysia, what's one thing that's from the books that you want to be more explicit in the TV show? I would say Elaine Vienda. See, I'm saying it. And I would say that even, I would say that, yeah, I know people say Avi Lane, but I would say Elaine and Avienda, even before, for me personally, I found that more important than making Moraine and Swan explicit, personally, just based on my reading of the books.
All right.
And we'll talk more in the White Tower segment, but yeah.
All right, that's fine. That's fine. I think we're just going to disagree on this one. I think it's funny because in season 2 coverage, I definitely got called a prude like multiple times in like reviews and emails. And that's fine. Like you can disagree with me on this. Just to me, I think maybe what bothers me is that I put Wheel of Time more in the category of Tolkien, which is like the most asexual thing you can have. Most of the time, there's some implied stuff, but very little. And so it feels like jarring to me to have this more, I think, Game of Thrones-y, modernistic, grimdark stuff going on.
Well, I'm more thinking ahead about, because to me, there's always a lot of sex in the Wheel of Time books. And I'm thinking there are some sexual situations that are uncomfortable. And so one thing, for instance, there's a sexual situation that comes up later in the books where the fact that people can feel who they're bonded to makes things awkward. And so in the show, they already said like, oh, well, you can shield your bond. So they're skirting that. But there's another situation. I think, readers of the books know which one I'm talking about. I don't know if they're going to skip it altogether. It involves Matt.
Yeah. I hope they skip it.
Yeah. And so for me, I see all these things because that particular situation with Matt is like one of the most discussed things in fandom. So to me, sex has always played a large role in this story.
Okay. All right. Listen, I'm just going to tell everybody now because I'm sure that everyone is like yelling at me by now in their car. I'm not going to like complain about this all season. So you don't have to, you can write me an email if you want, but you don't have to. You don't have to tell me to stop ranting about it because I will stop on my own. I can be better, everyone. I can improve.
I will say that there is also jokes people make about Rand panty dropping Althor, it's just like every girl who meets him is just like whoop.
But yeah, like that's why I'm like, I don't need this guy to get with every single woman he meets.
But that is him.
All right. I'm done complaining. I'm done. My rant is over for the season.
So one thing they added with Elaine's character, though, that definitely wasn't in the books, but I quite like, is that she likes to brew cider with a kick. I think that's a fun quirk of her personality in the show. And so we see that again this time.
Okay. All right, fair enough. I think they had great chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
I think the two of them had great chemistry. I bought it. I buy it in the show. I was just all I was saying in our preview was I didn't understand. I didn't read that in the book.
In the books, yeah. Well, one thing definitely a coupling from the books from in the show, Lan and Nynaeve, and we see this iconic moment where he gives her his family ring and says, "I would want no other woman as my queen, Nynaeve, in any life we have lived," referring, of course, to her remembering them having a whole life and child together in her alternative life in the Arches last season. So did that work for you there?
Yeah,
last goodbye?
I think so. The romance between these two is far better than it was in the book.
Yeah,
I mean,
beginning,
that's a weakness of Robert Jordan's overall. Is that he's just not that great at writing romance. Like things seem to like suddenly happen in the books.
It's true.
Somebody's like, I just love this person, and you're like, okay.
I guess that's a thing now.
Yep. So they're doing a much more gradual thing here, and I enjoy that.
Yeah, and just as a side note, we also, Lan explains to Nynaeve in this scene that he has this sword from he's the king of this kingdom of Malkir. He's uncrowned because the kingdom fell to the Blight when he was a baby and he was smuggled out and raised in Shinar, the next country to the south of that. But he has all these relics of Malkir because he would have been the king, including this sword, which he points out is power wrought, like the Heron Blade sword that Rand used to kill Ishamael in the season 2 finale. So that's definitely going to come back.
Yeah, and those are new things in the show. That's not like a thing that Heron marked swords are always power wrought in the books. Right.
Heron mark just meant that you had a certain level of
you were a sword master.
Yeah, and this one doesn't have a heron on it, but it is apparently it's a power wrought sword. And this is, I guess I'm not sure if they really made it explicit, but basically a lot of talents like the making of such weapons have been lost. So they can't make more of these types of swords. They have to be very ancient.
It's very Valyrian steel in Game of Thrones.
Just what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Which came later.
Yes. Yeah. This was a Robert Jordan idea. I mean, I'm sure he got it from somewhere too, but you're like some like legend or something. But as all these writers do, I just want to say. And so if you want to understand Lan, he's Aragorn. He's just Aragorn in a lot of ways, early on at least.
Right.
And especially this sword they're kind of making into Narsil all of a sudden. And you're like, okay.
Yeah. So we talked about the differences between Ren and Egwene in the show, and they have a more adult relationship, which I personally quite like. But it is creating complications now where Rand is coming across as a bit of a dog, where he's like apparently still getting visits from Lanfear in his dreams. And when the guys ask about Egwene, he's like, well, we never really talked about it. But let me tell you about Selene, this innkeeper from Kyrian.
Selene. Sorry, I'm going to do that every time because, my God. So wait, I thought...
But of course he doesn't mention it's Lanfear.
Yeah, exactly. Like I thought Rand understood that by the end of last season.
Oh, he knows. Yeah. He's just not telling them.
Right, exactly. Which, I'm banging a Forsaken, guys. Just the way he would say that.
Well, he's also like he's like I'm sleeping with my ex-girlfriend who has PTSD because the other girl I'm banging on the side, who's a Forsaken, tried to kill her. So
right. It's not great.
It's not a great look for him. No.
The Randicule expandicules.
But that wound, the wound in his side, which again comes from being wounded by Ishamael last season, it is looking gnarly.
They did a really great job, like
worse than the books.
That. Yeah. I thought I felt icky looking at it, and I think that's the point. You should feel icky looking at it. It's just this gnarly wound that won't heal.
Right. Yeah, because in the books I kind of get like, it's constantly infected or something like that, which is bad enough. But this one, you look at that, you're like, oh no, that's never going to heal.
Yeah, that's just evil. It's like
that's
straight
just
up
an evil spot on your body now. Yeah. Yeah, they did a really good job at that. Yeah.
Yikes.
Any final thoughts on this before we get to the climax of the episode, the second climax of the episode?
I don't think so.
right.
I think I've ranted long enough on this. I'm gonna get so many. Please, look. Feel free to at me. I'm open to criticism, but just know I'm doing my best here. I'm
I'm sure there are
stop
people
yelling
out
about
there.
this.
I'm sure there are people out there who agree with you.
Yeah. I just look. This is my personal preference. This is my podcast, so this is my personal preference. Why am I Southern all of a sudden? All right, move on. Let's do it.
I'll represent the people who are sex positive. No, I'm sorry, just kidding. I don't mean to cast you.
You know, it's funny because like
Yeah.
other shows, I'm like fine with it, but the Wheel of Time for some reason just like jars me every time we do it.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, well, this is a good point to take another quick break and then come back and wrap up the episode. All right, we are back to talk about the Gray Men and bubbles of evil. The good times are interrupted by what book readers might call bubbles of evil, with copies of Rand crawling out of mirrors to attack him and Egwene, and Loial, Perrin, and the Maidens of the Spear attacked by their own weapons and other objects. Meanwhile, as Matt is mesmerized by moving playing cards, we later find out we're being controlled by Lanfear, a humanoid creature not controlled by Lanfear. A gray man sneaks into the room and stabs Nynaeve several times. Fortunately, the gray man and other mischief is stopped before anyone is killed. Lanfear tells Moraine and Lan that most of the mischief was her doing, trying to scare Rand and his friends into going after the sword and tear, but not the gray man. There is only one person who can make a gray man, Lanfear says. Cut to Magedion, the Forsaken, who operates softly from the shadows, who has caught a white cloak named Jaichim Carradine in her web. He has disappointed their Dark Master, and so she forces him to consent to becoming a gray man himself. So what did you think about this iteration of the gray men?
I loved it. I mean, we never get to see how the gray men are created in the books. They just kind of show up. Mm-hmm. So I'm super glad that we get to see the creation of one. I mean, it's so dark and gross, but fitting.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is a new thing where they're specifically linked to Magedion, but I'm happy to give Magedion any more plot points they want to give her.
Yeah, she can be underused at certain times. I think the Forsaken, cutting them down is a good idea because then they can have more personality individually.
Right. But, there's 8 instead of 13 in the books, yeah.
Right, because some of the Forsaken kind of like come and go in the books, and because what are you gonna have one Forsaken per book? Like it's just like kind of what do you do with all these guys? I understand why he wanted 13. I think it's just hard to balance all of them.
Yeah, it was also a change a bit to have. So Jaichim Carradine is a character in the books. He's a dark friend who goes by Bors in the dark friend circle. So like when we saw last season, we saw a bunch of people sitting around in black cloaks, and one of them was clearly a white cloak. Everyone assumed that was Bors. But
yes, the man known as Bors.
The man known as Bors, who's actually this white cloak inquisitor, Jaichim. But this is new that he's being made into a gray man. And I do wonder if they're changing, like, how conscious is he at this point? It seems like his mind is gone. So obviously, I mean, I guess it makes sense. You know, they're not going to do the same thing with his whole story because obviously they just don't have enough time to do all of the characters and all their stories. So, yeah,
I think that's fine. I won't miss him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're still going to see him get up to stuff, but I just wonder how much because the thing in the books is mostly like the gray men are these mysterious assassins that are hard to see unless you're like really focused on them. So that makes they can slip into places and, you know, they're hard to stop. But it looks like it might be a little bit different for the show.
Yeah. I think that's fine. I enjoyed the portrayal. I think it was fitting.
Yeah. So about this bubble of evil, there wasn't a bubble of evil. Should we tell Marilyn not to watch this episode?
I think she could take it. It's not great, but it's not the worst thing I've ever seen either. This is a Pukila +1.
You think? Oh my gosh. When he caught the axe between his fingers, I yelled out, "Oh shit."
Fair enough. All right, maybe +2. We'll give her a +2.
I don't know. And yeah, we should point out that we also see him that shattered his wedding ring. I only caught that on the second watch, and he's looking at his shattered wedding ring later. Time to move on, Perrin.
Yeah, it is. Maybe that's what it's trying to tell him, right? That's what Lanfear is trying to tell him, at least.
What bothered me though is that it seems like Moraine and Lan were in on this. Like we see them listening until finally Nynaeve is calling out, and then Lan goes running. Because again, Nynaeve, that part was not part of the plan. A gray man was not supposed to come in and stab her. That was Moghedien. But all the other stuff, that was Lanfear doing it on purpose. And true, nobody died because they conveniently have a bunch of people with magical healing properties right there on the property. But they could have. Like, Perrin took an axe to the gut, and Chiad was nearly decapitated by that same axe until Loreal saved her. Like, people really could have died.
Yeah, look, you trust Lanfear. Like, I think that was one of the things that I actually didn't think that Book Moraine would have ever done, is say, like, let's go trust Lanfear for a night.
Right.
Especially because it seems like they knew they were going to try, she was going to do some kind of scare tactic. You're going to hire the Forsaken to, like, rough them up a little bit? Are you kidding?
I mean, the only person who Lanfear is motivated to protect is Rand.
Right.
So
oops.
She wouldn't have cared if Chiad died. You know?
Exactly. Oopsies.
Yeah. Oops. Yeah.
That's what we call a whoopsie daisies, Marine.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I kind of like Moraine and Lanfear working together more in the books. It will also, we know from the previews that there's going to be conflict between them. Sets it up nicely, but yeah, I don't know that I buy that Moraine would just sit through all that yelling.
No, I don't either. I think at some point she'd be like, all right, that's enough. That's enough. We don't need this anymore.
And we do also see that Rand's channeling is starting to already look pretty corrupted. And he's having a hard time letting it go. So that's dangerous. Yeah.
Yep.
And that brings us to the end of the episode, where the next morning the party parts ways. Rand refuses to go to Tyr, saying that he needs to first go to the Aiel Waste and become the Karakarn and gather his army of Aiel. Egwene says she will follow him, and Moraine and Lan will as well as Avienda to guard/watch the Karakarn, of course. And Nynaeve wants to stay at the tower to try to work through her channeling block. Elaine can't leave either. She's still a novice. And Matt wants to stay as well to get answers about his attachment to the horn and the ancient memories that are now crowding his head. Perrin, though, he just wants to go home. He wants to go back to the Two Rivers, and Loreal wants to go with him. And Chiad says she will follow Loreal as she owes him a life debt, and Bane will go wherever Chiad goes. No sign of Min, though, this episode.
No sign of Min. Can I ask you, like, did you understand that they're giving the Accepted a lot more freedom in this? And then in the books, like, the book's like, sure, you can leave the White Tower, but, like, you can't just, like, nope out and not listen to the Amerlin seat.
Yeah.
You don't have complete autonomy as an Accepted.
No, it's
not true. Even as an Aes Sedai can you, like, directly disobey the Amerlin seat.
I think it was just, how do we get Egwene out of here ASAP? Because we got to get this story on the road.
Yeah, and Swan really fell for it with, like, you can't leave. You don't have the ring. Mm-hmm. All right, I'll go back on the condition that you give me the ring.
Well, now I've got the ring. Goodbye.
Yeah, I don't know if I really bought that Swan was that dumb.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what is her choice really, though? Because of Egwene's attachment to Rand, they really do need Egwene.
Yeah,
at the
and she's powerful too. Like, they make very clear in the books, like, had Nynaeve not existed, Egwene probably would have been the most powerful.
Yeah, like, Egwene's so powerful. Nynaeve is the greatest channeler in a century.
I almost think of them as, like, the difference between an Ungreal and a Sangreal. You know, like another order of magnitude up from Egwene. Like, Egwene is an order of magnitude more powerful than the other Aes Sedai. And then Nynaeve is another order above that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say Nynaeve is like Lanfear level.
Yeah.
But she
Yeah.
can't control it, and Lanfear very much can.
Right, exactly. And that's the big point, right? Is that we have all these evil figures that are from the Age of Legends that have those memories, that have all these like trained abilities that it's not even like Nynaeve can learn these abilities easily. They're forgotten in her time. So how is she going to compete with these people?
Right. Like we got a tease last season that Lanfear can somehow get around more quickly than even the Ways. So
right, exactly.
We're going to learn more about. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And she can go into dreams, right? Like that's a whole other thing.
Yes. Yeah. We're definitely going to, I'm looking forward to, we got the tease last season about the Teleron Riyadh, the world of dreams. And that's definitely something that we're going to explore more this season. I'm excited about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And Teleron Riyadh, I think, is one of the most unique parts of the Wheel of Time. Like it's one of the standout aspects of this world.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and we get also another tease for a major thing that we're looking forward to this season, where Aviendha has warned Rand that in the Isle Waste, he will have to face the trial of Ruidien. And so the Waste, again, is the desert. It's not to be confused with the Blight, which is where, what has swallowed Malkir. But the Waste is basically a desert where the Aiel have exiled themselves for reasons. So I'm looking forward to exploring that. And it was very on point for Matt to say his goodbyes with a penis joke about the White Tower.
That was really good. I laughed out loud at that. I was like, all right, we got Matt back.
Yeah.
The one thing I think we didn't really talk about this episode was how Moiraine gets kind of a talking to from Varen of like, you might think that you control Rand, but you don't anymore. Like he is going to fulfill the prophecies. And you're not going to be able to expect how he's going to do it. And I think that that's going to be so important. I feel like that's going to be Moiraine's journey this season, is just to sort of figure out her new power balance with Rand.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that definitely echoes this point in the books where it's like, because it's not even just that Rand is so powerful, but he is just a really stubborn personality. He has been in his entire life. That's just fundamental to who he is as a person.
Right, and it's Ta'Viren, so things will bend around him. He's like the most powerful Ta'Viren ever.
Right.
So things just bend around him in a way that Moiraine can't control.
Right. Yeah, she cannot control him, so how does she find a way to influence him despite all of this?
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, well, any final episodes? Any final thoughts on the episode? Obviously, we'll come back after the outro music and talk a little bit more about book spoilers. But any final non-spoiler thoughts?
I think it was a great episode. Like I don't know what else to say.
Strong start.
A very strong start to season 2. If we can keep up this pace, I think we're going to get through like 6 books this season. And I really am very impressed with this team. I think that they. As I said, I think they started at a weak point of season 1, but I know you disagree. And I think that every season has been improving, and they are finally at a place where they're operating at a really high level. Yeah.
I agree with that it's been getting better and better every season. I think that's also true of the books. And also, I just think this team is finding their way. And I feel like after the first season, they were also given more leeway to find their way. And with, we've talked enough about COVID. But I hope that everyone listening, if you like this show, please get everyone to watch this show, because we want them to complete the entire story.
I'm very afraid of cancellation.
Yeah. It's an expensive show, and they need. And it's just been a period of cancellations everywhere. So we just really need strong numbers for this. So make everyone watch it twice.
Fair enough.
And also, if you enjoyed this episode, please do share this with other people who are Wheel of Time fans, or who want to be Wheel of Time fans. And you can leave us nice reviews that mention the Wheel of Time. That also helps.
You can complain in the reviews. As long as it's 5 stars, you can yell at me about my position on the Randicules.
Yes, so you can, Elaine Vienda for the win.
I'm fine with it in the show. I just want to listen. I want to make clear, I am fine with it in the show. I was just saying I didn't read it in the book.
Okay.
It's working for me. It's working for me now.
So we do have a Wheel of Time Season 3 season pass set up. So that is a one-time fee. If you don't want to do the whole subscription thing, but you want our extra Lorecasts, you want to listen to the episodes ad-free, you want access to the show guide, then all of this is included in a one-time $10 Season 3 Wheel of Time pass. And we're going to throw in also the last season's episodes too, so that you can listen to all that in one place, no ads and all that. Of course, subscribers get all of that anyway, plus a bunch of extras like the extra Severance episodes, like our extra 11Z's episodes this month. It looks like there's a dead heat in the voting between Scott Pilgrim and Zoolander for this month's 11Z's.
I haven't looked at it in a few days, but I did see the back and forth going on. It's very exciting.
So subscribers, if you haven't voted yet, you can determine whether we're doing Scott Pilgrim or Zoolander this month.
And I stupidly put up My Sister's Keeper. I was like, I don't know, let's give people like a sad option too, since we have two silly movies. It has, I think, 1 vote, 2 votes.
Well, that's more than, remember when I did Teen Witch and I got 0 votes?
Oh, gosh. So Scott Pilgrim is ahead by 1 vote right now.
Okay. Very close.
Yeah.
I'm reading all the Scott Pilgrim books just because I always meant to anyway, so just in case I'm reading them. But then on the other side, David's never seen Zoolander, so, yeah.
That's true. Mm-hmm. Both, I think, would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I will say, subscribers, you also just recently got an extra Daredevil prep episodes where Jean and I looked back on the Netflix series and kind of recapped those to set up for this one. And also lots of stuff going on the public feed. What's going on the public feed right now?
A lot of stuff. I just put out a Silmarillion story, so that was a lot of fun. David and I just recorded a Star Wars Film Fest, which I think is going to come out just after this episode. Like, it's going to come out the Monday after this episode. And before this episode, Lorehounds play on the Indiana Jones game that came out in December is going to post. So plenty of bonus episodes. I know David and I are also going to do a mid-season for White Lotus. Are you coming on that, Elysia? Do you want a White Lotus with us?
Yeah. If it works out, I'm definitely all in on the White Lotus stuff. So,
all right.
Yeah, we'll see how it works out, because also with Daredevil's going on right now. So Jean and I will have, before this, we'll have our reaction to the first 2 episodes that just came out as we're recording. And we're going to be covering Daredevil. We would love to do it weekly, but it's just such a crunch time that we're going to end up doing every 2 to 3 episodes together, similar to what we did with the Penguin. So,
yeah. Which I think was fine. I think that worked out. So this will be good. I wanted to watch it last night, but I was like, I should probably rewatch The Wheel of Time. So I did. And I'm glad I did, because it was more fresh for me this morning.
Right.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to try to catch up on Daredevil this weekend.
Yeah, I think it was a strong start to the season, the first 2 episodes. So I'm looking forward to seeing where it's going. We have full coverage of Wheel of Time, obviously. Full coverage. You guys are doing weekly breakdowns of The Last of Us?
Yes, we are, when that comes out. I mean, I love The Last of Us games. I loved season 1. I'm really looking forward to season 2.
Yeah. And Andor is, they're doing that annoying release schedule. So we're coming up with you had a great idea for a plan to sort of deal with the fact they're going to drop 3 episodes a week.
Yeah. I want to announce that as a fanfare thing of what we're going to do.
Okay.
I want to do a cutesy promo. So so hold off on how we're going to do it.
Lips zipped. And then also Doctor Who is coming out in April too. So we're figuring that out. But unfortunately, that probably means that Doctor Who is not getting weekly episode coverage this time, because it's just too much.
Well, last time we weren't even going to do weekly episodes, and we were like, we're having fun. Let's just keep going.
Yeah, we'll see what happens this time. Yeah. But we might have an extra British voice joining us.
That's true.
But yeah, also do explore the link tree in the show notes, where you can check out all the affiliates. Radioactive Ramblings is currently doing weekly coverage of Invincible. Also, of course, My Will Shift Dust and the Star Wars Canon Timeline podcasts.
What are you doing over there? Because I every podcast I've recorded lately, I'm like, I don't know what Alicia's doing next, but I'm sure it's something good.
Dune.
You are doing Dune.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're doing the book breakdown. Like, we're doing big detail on the original book breakdown in the public feed, just because that's the basis for everything else. And then, going through the adaptations thereof.
Ooh, maybe I'll write in since I'm actually a Dune reader now.
Yeah. Well, if you want to join for any of the episodes about any of the adaptations. So.
All right, let's talk.
Yeah. Yeah, David joined for the first part of the book breakdown. So.
Oh, good. That's fun.
Mm-hmm. And of course, there's also the separate Severance feed, and there's a discounted season pass for the extra episodes for that. And in the link tree, also Discord, where we have Wheel of Time chat going strong under current shows and chats for all these other things too. And if you want to send your feedback, I guess we haven't really talked much about this, but I guess we'll end up doing sporadic feedback episodes for the Wheel of Time.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to do it that way because we're going to be pre-recording a lot of these.
Yeah.
Just because of scheduling. Like if we do not get ahead on this, we're not going to survive Andor.
No.
So we got to do this. So
yeah,
we're going to be ahead on the recording. Again, we're not watching ahead.
Right.
But sending your feedback. Mm-hmm. We'll do like a mid-season probably on feedback. We'll see how much feedback we get, and we'll discuss it cadence.
So send it to watt@thelorehounds.com, WOT@thelorehounds.com, and we'll put together some feedback episodes. Do you want to read the names? The reading of the names.
The reading of the names from the White Tower archives. Sure. We have our Discord server boosters, which we like to thank. Aaron K, Tiller the Thriller, Dork of the Ninjas, Duve71, Athena Agilea, Tina, Lestu, Nancy M, Ghost of Perdition, and Radioactive Richard. Then our Lore Masters, our top tier subscribers on Patreon and Supercast, who, by the way, if you're recurring, you get all of our bonus content, not just the Wheel of Time.
Mm-hmm.
Samartian, Michael G, Michelle E, Brian P, SC, Peter OH, Bettina W, Adam S, Nancy M, Duve71, Brian 8063, Frederick H, Sarah L, Gareth C, Matthew M, Sarah M, DJ Miwa, Andra B, Kwang Yu, Deadeye Jedi Bob, Nathan T, Alex V, Sub-Zero, Aaron K, Dally V, Mothership 61, Gnarls, Kathy W, Lestu, Jeffrey B, Elysia U, Neil F, Ben B, Scott F, Stephen N, Julia F, Kali S, Il Mariel, and Adrian. Thank you, everyone, for your support. It always helps us do more coverage and go crazy with all our wacky plans for the spring.
And just to, of course, if you want all the spoilers from the books, stick around until after the music. But to wrap up this episode for most of you who don't want the book spoilers, I'll just say, the wheel of time turns and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth comes again and finally brings us season 3. In one age called the third season by some, an age yet to come, an age long past, a wind rose in the mountains of mist. The wind was not a beginning. There are neither beginnings nor endings to the turning of the wheel of time, but it was a beginning.
I love it. We did it. We've written a new Wheel of Time novel. All right. Bye, everyone.
See you next time.
The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by The Lorehounds. You can send questions, feedback, and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all our episodes at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities.
All right, still around. All information discussed from this point on is sealed to the Hall of the Tower. It includes spoilers for all of the books, all the way up to the end. So do make sure you have the proper authorization to sit in on this meeting.
That's right. If you're not a sitter, you have to step out. There's no other option.
You have to wait outside the hall. So let's start with that door. So this means, I guess we're getting the Aelfin, the foxes, and the snakes.
Yeah, I could see them subverting it a little bit still, but I think we're getting some kind of thing like that.
It was a relief because I was worried. Because
it is one of the weirder things.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's a fan favorite thing, but it could be cut. But then again, it is so important to Moraine's arc and Matt's arc, especially those two, Lanfear. Yeah.
Even Rand, I think, gets a lot of insight from it.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true. One thing we knew was coming this season, and I'm very excited to see play out, is the Battle of the Two Rivers.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really fun. And when I say fun, I mean brutal and horrific, but also beautiful to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, and you had something in the notes about how Ivan dying will lead to Alana bonding Rand, but I guess that must happen next season because she's going to Two Rivers, we know from the promos and the posters.
Yeah, I think it does happen in book 5 or 6 with Alana and Rand. So that would make sense to me. But I do think that this grief is going to fuel her bonding Rand forcibly. Yeah. And that has been, in the book, they make very clear this is a violation. This is like a really serious, like the other sisters even look very much down on her when they find out she did this.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I do wonder why if they killed him off earlier because the actor couldn't return. Because she does lose a warder in the Battle of the Two Rivers, but now she's losing a warder at the beginning of the season too. Instead.
Yeah. I forgot that she lost a warder in the Battle of the Two Rivers, so interesting. They never really make clear if Alana is Black Aja in the books. I think she's not.
I think they make it clear that she's not. I never saw a suggestion that she was personally.
I think the forcible bonding, Varen questions it at some point, I believe. She's like, is Alana really, Varen goes through this like questioning thing with her, which she does with multiple people because, she's testing people in general.
Yeah. Because Varen's Black Aja. So, sorry, this is spoiler zone, we said.
Right. This is all the books. But anyway, yeah, I think I'll be interested to see if they make Alana be Black Aja in this.
I would not like that because this also comes down to where, the whole discussion of just because someone does bad things, it doesn't mean that they're sworn to the dark. It's just that people do bad things.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, but also Alana's motivations are kind of opaque at times in the books. I think they're developing her a lot better in the show.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think that they're developing her a lot better. She was a character I always found interesting in the books, but now in the show, she's probably one of my favorite characters. So
yeah, she's very cool in the show. I think she's much, much more interesting in the show.
Yeah, there's also we set up the propaganda pictures, which we know like this becomes a thing with especially Rand fighting on top of the tower. Pictures went around of him fighting in the sky with the Shamael. And we know that we met a character last season from a Shinaran, Massima, and he becomes the prophet of the Dragon Reborn because of all these, he was there in Falm, he saw what happened, and all these images going around, stories are starting. So yeah, we're going to see that fame blow up in a way that I don't think the boys are going to like.
I would not be upset if they cut the prophet storyline entirely.
Why?
I think it's the most boring plotline. What does it do in the end? He just kind of like dies unceremoniously.
I mean, I think in a lot of cases they can streamline a lot of these plots.
Yeah. I'm just like, what did that amount to? And I don't think it amounted to much.
Okay. So, yeah, you mentioned already, you said before the Randicule expandicules, but I don't think so. I think that they're just making the Elaine Avienda connection, the sexual side of it, more explicit. Whereas I always assume that was such in the books. These two girls have a special bond. They become first sisters, just like Bane and Chiat are first sisters. And I always looked at them also like,
I did get that from Bane and Chiat in the books.
Okay.
Just not from Elaine and Avienda.
Okay. Yeah, they always had a special bond beyond. And I just think it, in terms of, Rand Pennydropper Althor, I just, if he is going to have the polycule like he does in the books, I want it to be more even, where it's not just like everybody's focused on Rand,
Yeah.
Where people have their own relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's fine I don't think that they develop the Avienda Elaine friendship even enough in the early books,
Mhm.
because they're all of a sudden Aviend is like obsessed with Elaine, and you're
Right.
like, well, what? Why though?
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. In the books, a lot of these things just happen suddenly.
Exactly, and that's a criticism of like all the romance in those books, basically in these books.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do wonder if it's all going to play out the same way, or if they're going to add more complications. It does seem like they're setting up Rand with the whole Lanfear and Egwene thing to be like, I don't want to be tied down. Who wants labels? Who wants just, one relationship?
Oh my god, Rand! Can I just say, like, in a lot of ways, Rand is a very good guy, and in some ways, he just straight up sucks.
Yeah. Which makes him an interesting character, but for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that band that Naomi took off with, I'm assuming that that's the Domination Band, which is the male Adam, which is so they.
Oh, you think so?
Huh. So the Black Aja wants it because they want to collar the Dragon Reborn, basically, like we saw Egwene last season. But
Yeah. Well, that was in Tanchico already, though, in the book. So I'm wondering, yeah. But
I'm assuming,
most of in the books, most of the Terangriel they took were Dreamont Terangriel.
I'm sure that's in there too. And we saw that statue that I think is a Sangreal that we see in the books.
You think that's the female or male, like, big one?
The Chodankal? Maybe. Well, we do see Moraine with an orb in the previews that I'm assuming is linked to that. So,
yeah. The only other statue I can think of is, Rand has like the statue of the little man that helps him get the edge in the fight with Asmodean.
That seemed to have disappeared after the first season.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Who knows? I mean, maybe he'll find it in a coat. It's in my other pants.
Yeah. I do predict. I think that they have to do next episode the whole stick fight with Matt, and I think they're going to introduce the Camelin crew, and do the whole stick fight because they got to get those people out of there. A bunch of them are going to Tenchico, so I'm looking forward to that.
we gotta move fast now in Tarvalon.
Right. Yeah, so I'm really excited about the next episode because I've been really looking forward to all the Camelin characters coming in, and I've been really looking forward to that stick fight where Matt beats up the princes.
Yeah, that's one of the best ones. I love when when the guy lectures them afterwards, and he's like, "This greatest swordsman of all time. What's the one time he lost?" And they're like, "I didn't read that chapter in history."
Yeah, like don't underestimate a farmer with a bow staff. And I actually wanted to, because of that, in the books, I've always wanted to learn to fight with a staff like that, especially because I'm very short, and I want to be able to have a weapon that can keep people at a distance.
Yeah, I hear you. You're gonna have a bow staff now?
I mean, I always wanted to learn. I still haven't, but it's still on my bucket list.
I took karate classes, like Okinawan karate classes, for a while in high school, and they did some bow staff stuff, and I was like, I am too clumsy for this, and so I stopped.
I figure it would help me with that, but yeah. And I think do you think we're getting the tower split this season, and when?
I think it'll be towards the end of the season, but yes, that does happen in book 4.
Do you think Swan will survive in the TV version?
I could see it either way. I'm leaning towards no.
Yeah.
And I think that's exciting. Like, we have an actual stake here where book readers can go like, all right, the plot armor off.
Yeah.
Like, look, obviously Rand has plot armor. Like, the Emond's Field 5 all has plot armor. But other than that, I think we are much more loosey-goosey with this.
Yeah. And I think, Sophie Okaneda, she is just a very busy actress. So I can see, maybe she doesn't have all that much time to keep going. But also, I just think it becomes more interesting for Leanne if she carries that part of the story by herself, considering it's a TV show and they have to pare down on things.
Right. Yeah, I think that'd be good. She also, I think, does a more interesting thing with her new life after Stilling. Like, she goes like, I'm gonna find a completely new personality. I'm gonna get back in touch with who I was before.
Right.
the White Tower. And I think that's more interesting than what Swan does, which is like, all right, same mission, but no powers.
Right. And since they made, this romance between Moraine and Swan, it's implied that stops, once they start chasing after the dragon, but they continued it in the TV version, which I support. But then that means that for Moraine's story to go places it needs to go, they can't always have that, these estranged lovers thing they've been stretching out for 2 seasons. So
if Moraine doesn't end up with Tom Maryland, I will shed no tears. I've never felt it. I've never thought that was a reasonable thing.
In the books, no, but they made him hot in the TV show, and I think they did that for a reason.
But I don't want to complain about Tom Maryland in the TV show right now.
I know a lot of you're definitely not alone in complaining about that, but yeah, I do like the TV Tom.
Where's his fucking coat?
He's got patches on the inside.
His coat? Where is the coat? And where is his whimsy? Like, there's no, like, he does have a darkness to him in the book, but he also has this other side to him that's like this gleeman, right? Like, he's not a gleeman. He's just like a early 2000s folk singer.
Well, he's coming back this season, so it will be interesting to see how that's dealt with. The one thing I really missed in season 2 were the songs, because we got 2 banger songs in season 1, one from him and one from the Emond's Field 5, and apparently
I didn't like a song, but it's fine. It's fine.
I loved it. I loved it. You can go to my YouTube channel and hear me and Dead Eye Jedi Bob covering it. So that's how much I liked it. But yeah, it's apparently we will get at least one episode with some music, which is reflective of the books. Like, the songs are an important part of the book. So I missed that last season, and I look forward to having him back. There was a scheduling conflict last season, but I'm glad.
Oh, was that what it was?
Yeah, because
I thought we could have had more Tom last season. Yeah, Tom, I think, is another symptom of what I call the Game of Thronesification of this show. This like, everything has to be dark and everything has to be dirty and everything has to be sad. And I'm like, we're moving away from that. So I hope that they do the same thing with Tom.
He's a little goofy in the books, and honestly, I don't mind them toning that down.
No, you need the goofiness, though.
At times.
Having again, like, it's Matt. Like, you need these characters who, like, can be goofy, but also can be very serious. And I think that I say this as someone who kind of embodies that sometimes. Like, I like to be represented. I like to be represented as somebody who can be glib, but also can take things seriously.
Sure. And they're doing a good job with that with Matt now. I'm hoping they do the same with Tom. But the thing is, in the books, it's like Robert Jordan did try to sell Tom as sexy at certain points. Like, at one point, there's Elaine's even hitting on him, which I'm like, ick.
Yeah,
also,
no, don't do that.
Because he was sleeping with her mom. But, which is, ick. But at least now I see that side, why he would have turned the head of a queen if they continue with that story, why, he would turn the head of Moraine, why, it all makes more sense with this Tom for me. Yeah, but I understand a lot of people feel the same way you do.
Yeah.
But what do you think of this version of Moghedien?
Oh, killer. Great stuff. I mean, they make clear right away in the books, like, she's also a coward. I don't think we've gotten that yet, but I like, you have to set the power level before you're like, oh, but also she has these weaknesses of personality.
I mean, but the thing is she a coward, or is it in a way like she's a rogue? She's like in Dungeons and Dragons terms, rogues should operate from the shadows because they are more physically weak and their strength is hiding and sneaking and surprising, and that's Moghedien, softly from the shadows. So she did say when she was introduced last season, she was like, "Yeah, Lanfear, you are calling me a coward, but that's not." The way I interpret it is you're calling me a coward, but that's not what it is. I'm just smart. I'm smarter than you, Lanfear.
I'm pretty sure most cowards would not call themselves cowards. So I don't
think she is. I never thought she was in the books.
Okay. I think she doesn't take calculated risks. She only does things when she is certain she will succeed. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which, there's something to be said for that, but also I think, what is life without taking some risks?
Well, we'll see how this plays out. It's interesting they gave her this ability, the only one who can make the gray men, so that gives her an extra thing, an extra tool in her tool belt.
And that makes sense for her character, right? Like if she's doing it from the shadows. And I love the way, like, if she's the spider, like, this is what happens in her web.
Right. Yeah. She literally hangs them up in a web of power. Yeah. So we said there's going to be 8 Forsaken rather than the 13 in the books. And so we've already gotten Ishamael, already dead, but he was on one of the posters. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
In the back. So that's interesting because he does get reincarnated in the books, but I don't know. We'll see how they handle that.
Reincarnated in a completely different look, though.
Exactly. So no one recognizes him. But yeah, so let's just say he's off the table for now. We've already met Lanfear. We've met Moghedien. We've had Grendel and Samael name dropped. And then we know there's 3 more that are not yet confirmed in the show, but we do know that Lord Gabriel has been cast and is part of the Camelin plot. So that's Ravin, another Forsaken. And I'm wondering if Gareth Byrne is going to be folded into Lord Gabriel.
Bryn? Gareth Bryn?
Yeah. Sorry, Bryn.
That's all right. We get so many reviews about our pronunciation that I like try to jump up if I hear something.
I got a bad review though for correcting pronunciation, and
I know.
So
you know what? Look, we're never gonna please everyone. Yeah. So now, we're gonna get like 2 separate bad reviews of like, Elysia, pronounce Gareth Bryn correctly. John, stop correcting Elysia.
Yeah, we're doing our best, especially, I mean, I know I'll lean on you for pronunciations more because you listen to the audiobooks. I have read the back, the glossary and the pronunciations there, but my brain does what it wants to do with these names.
Yeah, I hear you. I heard a couple things today that I almost corrected, and then I was like, let's just let it slide. Shinar. I think you said Shinar.
Okay, sure.
I'm just telling you that's what they do in the audio.
Yeah, in my head it's Shinarin. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. What was it I was going to say? I read the books through on Kindle first, or actually part physical, part Kindle, and then I went back and I did the audiobooks on a subsequent.
Yeah. Well, as you pointed out, even within the show, like they pronounce Moraine's name 5 different ways. So
they do. It's like Moraine, Moiraine.
Yeah.
Like pick one.
But to be fair, people pronounce on this very podcast, people pronounce my names 5 different ways. So that's just normal. That is how people do.
That's true. Well, if I do it wrong, you tell me.
Okay. I have a healthy tolerance for how my name is pronounced. But yeah, so that leaves 2 Forsaken up in the air. So one, we know from the statues we've seen, one's going to be female. So that leaves either Semirhage or Missana. And Semirhage is one who's embedded in the Shang-Chen, and Missana is one who's embedded in the tower. I personally think it's more interesting to have Semirhage on the Shang-Chen side.
Completely
agree.
This point. Much better plot line.
Yeah. Yeah, we have so much already with Black Aja in the tower that, that would be.
I think Lanfear could do exactly what Missana did, and it would not change a thing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and then one more male. So I think we already know Bethamel and Agenor. They're gone. They were never going to be in the TV show, and that is as it should be.
Yeah.
I think we can also write off Belal is just another one of the side Forsaken who can be easily folded into one of the others. That leaves for the last one, is it going to be Demandred or is it going to be Asmodean?
You got Demandred, I think, because you have to work him in with the Sharans. You have to have him get back. Although we know that Robert Jordan originally planned for Mazrim Taim to be Demandred. And so I wonder if the show, and I think it would have been better, by the way. I think it would have been way better if he would have kept with it. He changed it because fans figured it out. But like, I don't know. I think that's kind of cheap. I think that was a mistake on his part. So I wonder if the show will bring it back. I would be fine with that.
No, I think that would make sense. And by the way, speaking of pronunciations, I noticed last season, I always called him Mazrim Taim in my head, or Taim in my head, but they called him Taim last season.
Oh yeah, I always said Mazrim Taim.
Okay. But yeah, I think that would make the most sense. And I think Asmodean, I know everyone wants Asmodean to be in it because like every time there's a new casting announcement, they're like, does he play an instrument? Is it Asmodean? But I think the biggest thing Asmodean does is he trains Rand, and I think that they've been setting up giving that plot to Logain, which just makes more sense because Logain's a more central character, and it sets up his later storylines better.
Yeah, because again, Logain nopes out of the books for a while, and then he comes back. I think it's much better to be consolidating these characters.
Yeah, and I want them to do more with Shara in general, assuming we make it to the later seasons.
Yeah. I mean, they either have to do more with it or they have to cut it. It really is almost like a Deus Ex Devila. I don't know. It just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah. Devila Ex Machina, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. I definitely flipped that whole thing. I think that the Demandred felt really out of nowhere in the books. I think that was one of the weaker changes. So I think they should make Mazrim Time Demandred. Yes.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. And I think we should just remind people that just because we had the Black Aja reveal in the tower doesn't mean that the Black Aja is done with the tower, because again, they very firmly said the name Alviarin, who was there at Egwene's testing. So she's not only Black Aja in the book, she was the head of the Black Aja, if I remember correctly.
She was at least very high ranking. But then she, of course, had to listen to Masana anyway. Right.
Yeah, but I mean, just give her Masana's plot, or, I don't know. Or maybe she already is. Yeah, we'll see. I don't mind them, combining. There are hundreds of characters, literally, in the book. So it makes a lot of sense for them to combine a few of these plot lines.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm with it. They're doing a good job on the adaptation versus inspiration meter. I think they're in a good spot right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm very excited that later today I can press play on season 2. And I'm sorry to listeners at home that
Episode 2.
Episode 2.
Yes.
And season
I agree.
2, always. Yeah.
I agree. Well, you don't have to apologize to the people at home, because they can also go to episode 2.
Oh, that's true. The first 3 episodes. Yeah. So we're going to figure out after watching episode 2 if we're going to cover 2 and 3 together or separately.
Yep. All right. Well, let's go do it.
All right, let's do that. Well, thank you everyone for hanging out with us until the end. And we want to hear your book spoiler thoughts as well. If you want to send those to watt@thelorehounds.com. We're both book readers, so you don't have to worry about spoiling us. We'll just talk about that in a special spoiler cast in the feedback episode.
That's right. All right.
Spoiler section.
We will see you on the next episode.
Bye.
Hey everyone, David here. Severance is back. The Lorehounds are partnering with Properly Howard to bring you in-depth weekly coverage of Season 2. Join me, John, Anthony, and Steve as we unpack every twist, theory, and revelation. We've created a dedicated feed just for our Severance coverage. Simply search for Severance Lorehounds in your podcast app, or find the direct link in our link tree. Our weekly episodes dig deep into the show's mysteries, themes, and bigger questions about identity and consciousness that makes Severance so compelling. Season Pass and regular community subscribers get ad-free access to our weekly episodes, plus exclusive content like our Supply Closet bonus series, featuring fascinating conversations with experts like the team from Nevermind the Music. We've explored the neuroscience of memory and personality, decoded the hidden meanings in the show's musical themes, and there's much more to come. You'll also get Steve and Anthony's complete Season 1 rewatch series. We believe in total transparency with our listeners. And unlike mammalians nurturable, we're happy to share all of our secrets. Find the link for the Severance feed in the show notes below, or search Severance Lorehounds wherever you get your podcasts. Come theorize with us about what's really happening at Lumen.
And remember, the episode you think you're about to hear is merely a reflection of the episode that thinks it's about to be heard.
Ready to wander Middle-earth? Join me, Aaron, your guide to the world and works of J.R.R. Tolkien. On the Lore of the Rings podcast, we explore Tolkien's epic stories, from the Lord of the Rings to the Silmarillion and more, uncovering the deep lore, breathtaking tales, and timeless inspiration behind them. Whether you're a fan of the movies, new to the books, or rediscovering them after years, Lore of the Rings is your perfect companion. Ever wonder about the history of the One Ring? Or what secrets lie within the stories of The Hobbit? Or maybe you're curious about the legends that inspired Amazon's Rings of Power or the War of the Rohirrim movie? We explore it all with simple explanations and a sense of awe that honors Tolkien's brilliance. So let's wander together, because as Tolkien reminds us, not all those who wander are lost. Visit ringspodcast.com to pick your favorite podcast player and start your journey into Middle-earth. That's ringspodcast.com to find the Lore of the Rings podcast. Let's wander together in the world of J.R.R. Tolkien.